Well, good morning. This morning I want to share what I think is the first development or building upon what is the Canadian identity, but I think it applies to all of us because the Canadian identity is that which we come from different parts, but we've decided to work together. So we have different identities, cultures from around the world, but we all choose to share in the weal and woe and a shared identity that is Canadian. It's within our anthem, both in English and French, more so in the French. So what I call the ship and the snow, rebuilding the Canadian soul. I'll make sure the mic's still working perfect. So welcome to the ship and the snow, rebuilding the Canadian soul. So the myth we never had. Canada was never forged in revolution's fire, nor unified under a single tongue, faith, or founding story. We planted no flag on distant shores through conquest, erected no monuments to manifest destiny. Our mythology has always been quieter, more scattered, written in snowfall rather than blood. If there is a story that binds us, it is not one of glory, but of endurance, not of a fixed identity, but of endless relation. We are, in essence, the ship of Theseus, made nation. Each generation removes a plank, language, belief, landscape, and replaces it with another. Yet somehow, we remain ourselves. Or do we? Perhaps Canada has never been about achieving a stable self at all, but about the sacred act of becoming, not permanence, but presence, persistence, not power projected outward, but ethos cultivated within, a telos manifest. This is our unspoken national myth. We are not heroes of a single story, but perpetual becomers of many stories. So the Garrison transformed. Northrop Frye named this identity the Garrison mentality, that foundational Canadian psyche shaped by isolation and defense, communities huddled against wilderness and the unknown. But what if that garrison has evolved? What if our inherited fear transformed not into aggression, but into profound attention? Today's garrison is no longer a wooden fort against nature's fury, but a moral sanctuary against forgetting. We defend not territory, but memory, sacred spirit. Not borders, but the fragile spaces where recognition becomes possible. From this transformed defense emerges a new ethic, not of conquest, but of conscious coexistence, a nation that does not shout its name across the world, but whispers instead, "You too belong here." So trauma as teacher, the national dialectic. Canada became, not through manifest destiny, but through manifest catastrophe. Moments that demanded we choose between breaking and becoming. The Halifax explosion's sudden reckoning with fragility. The first gas clouds of Ypres, where innocence died. Vimy Ridge, where we learned to stand together. Residential schools, where we learned the weight of our shadows. The October crisis, testing the strength of our convictions. The long colonial wound, still teaching us about harm and healing, and the worse of the traumatizing of our indigenous. These moments did not unify us through pride, but through witnessing, through suffering that demanded reflection. And from that reflection, slowly, insight emerged. Not immediately, not cleanly, but inevitably. Unlike nations that define themselves through triumph, Canada defines itself through trial. We are not built by winning, but by choosing again and again, not to be undone by what we've endured and inflicted. This is not weakness. This is the ongoing work of a national soul learning to see itself clearly. The I-thou nation. To be Canadian is to inhabit paradox as naturally as breathing. I say, c'est bizarre, because it's bilingual and it's true. We are bilingual while most speak one language, multicultural while wrestling with monocultural institutions, peacekeeping while confronting our own internal strife, our own wars. Yet, somehow, we remain afloat. Like Theseus' ship, our identity resides not in our parts, but in the act of rebuilding. We are a gestalt greater than the sum of our parts. Our community is not sameness, but shared commitment, a shared telos, an ethos, a will to bind, the will to carry forward, to adapt, to listen across difference. Martin Buber wrote of I and Thou. It's in the 6th and 7th line of the Isha Upanishad, that sacred relation where we meet one another as beings rather than objects. Canada, at its finest moments, is this relation made national, made manifest. We are built not on bloodlines, but on boundaries that dissolve into recognition. We do not demand assimilation. We offer the possibility of being seen, of becoming, a metempsychosis of a nation, of a people, of an individual. To be Canadian is not to be one fixed thing. It is to say, I see you, I will rebuild this ship beside you, with you, even when we disagree about its destination. The sacred responsibility of standing guard. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee, not for territory alone, not for ideology, but for the thou, for the fragile space between us where meaning takes root and grows. That line is not patriotic boasting, but sacred responsibility. We stand guard not merely for a flag, but for a way of being in the world, for truth over comfort, for presence over projection, for the courage to see ourselves as we are rather than as we wish to be. That's Carl Friston's Free Energy. Our anthem is both prayer and promise, a call to remembrance, a vow to listen, a commitment to change when change serves justice. The work ahead. We are not yet whole. The work is far from finished, but we need not revolution. We need reckoning. We need the courage to remember that every catastrophe carries a mirror, showing us who we have been and who we might become. Remember, the status quo is the way things are, not the way they could be. Accept that trauma offers no guarantees. We can lose ourselves in it or find ourselves through it. That is the tragedy of trauma. It doesn't need to be a tragedy, nor does a trauma have to be something other than winning or learning. Choose insight or integration before tragedy forces our hand, wisdom before the world demands it of us. I argue we should learn of trauma before it happens. Otherwise, it becomes exponentially more difficult to heal or integrate that same trauma. Speak not for false unity, but for genuine understanding across our differences. Remember that. Speak not for false unity, but for genuine understanding across all our differences. Rebuild the ship together, even when, especially when, no one agrees on its final shape. That is how the future is built, with people thinking 20 and 40 years ahead. Let us not wait for suffering to reveal who we are. Let us become that now, through presence and witness, through the daily act of relation that transforms strangers into neighbors, neighbors into fellow travelers, and on this improbable northern journey we share. When the world asks what it means to be Canadian, let our answer be lived rather than spoken. We are the ones who choose to become together instead of breaking apart. That is our work. That is our gift. This is the ship we rebuild with every act of recognition, every choice to see each other clearly, every decision to stand guard, not for what we have been, but for what we might yet become. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.